Welcome, everybody. Being as we've got some members of the public, I'll just iterate a couple of things. First, as public speakers have registered to speak, you get 3 minutes. I might forget to tell you at the time, but I'll certainly tell you if you exceed 3 minutes. Anybody else, I'm afraid, is not permitted to speak from now till the meeting finishes, and we don't really sort of welcome applause because it's a public meeting, not public entertainment. Right, apologies.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Walton and Councillor Jones-Williams.
Thank you very much. I think everybody else is here, so that's okay. Anybody with a disclosable pecuniary interest or other disclosable interest? Councillor Wells.
Chairman, it's certainly non-disclosable, but just for the purpose of being transparent, I do recognise one of the members of the public here this evening, and we sing in the same choir. It's no more than that, but I just thought I'd put that on record.
You might be discordant tonight, you never know. Right. Minutes. Has anybody to comment on the previous minutes? Can I have a proposer? Thank you, Peter. And David is seconding. Those in favour, can you please show? Right. Any to the contrary? Anybody abstaining? No. So that looks clearly passed. You weren't here. So I think, strangely enough, you're permitted to vote on the minutes even if you're not here. It's weird. Yeah. Right. Chair's announcements, just the officers. So we've got Simon Jones, who's our development manager north, next to me. Lee Walton, our case officer, who's dealing with this particular case we're dealing with tonight, on my extreme left. Rachel Cherrington Walker, who's new to me, but not new, very much not new to the council, as our legal advisor. And Alison Freeman, our Democratic Services officer, who's standing in for one of the colleagues tonight who's got COVID. So I'm rather glad you're here. Right. Right. No consultees, I'm told. I thought we might have been getting one by on there or not anymore. Did I read something about the highways coming over the line? Or? No? No. Next meeting was. Yeah. Right. There was an update report. It was published yesterday, so I'm assuming everybody has read it. Right. Thank you. So now, Lee, we are in your hands. And the application, by the way, is for land at Hope Lane, Clifton upon Team.
Apologies to everyone. We seem to have a technical blip that we're trying to work through, so if you can bear with us. So first of all, the aerial image that shows the red outline and its relationship to the village. Although looking at it, it's missing out the more recent development to the other side of Hope Lane. Of the site, I would say the land falls away to the north and south, north and east, from where you're stood at the field gate in the southeast corner by the roadside that we'll see later. So the built form that would come forward would be on the higher land adjacent to the houses that you can see there at the moment. If we can move to the next slide, and just showing you the location and the blue outline that shows you the wider ownership of that site by the applicant. And the indicative master plan that shows it will be the likely layout of the built form and the green space that will come forward once we receive a reserve matters, if we get that far. Next. And so we have some similar drawings that have been given to us, none of which would become approved drawings as such. They're there for illustrative purposes. And if you give me And so we have a cross-sections drawing showing you how the buildings would sit on the ground. And we have the access point, which is, this would be an approved drawing. And the permission that seeks the upgrade of footways connecting the site with the village centre that would come forward as part of any legal agreement. And so we move on to the drainage layout that's envisaged, of which we have some proposed conditions by the drainage bodies, and a photograph next, just showing you the field gate to the current site, and the next, which is another view from the inside looking back at the houses. And if we can just go back to the aerial photograph, which, just to sum up really, so looking at that and mindful of the more recent development that's across Hope Lane, the development would be seen more as a rounding off rather than a projection into the countryside. Whilst the location is outside of the development boundary, because of the council's lack of a 5-year housing land supply, the boundary itself isn't a hard and fast restriction. There's a degree of flexibility that's given, and so we fall back on any of the technical consultees that we would have received to have considered, and also in this case I think landscape and character and appearance, whether or not that would be sufficient reason to refuse. And of course the technical responses that we've received don't actually give us options of refusing. So as the planning officer in balancing this, I have to fall back on the government's objective, which is to boost the housing supply, to which substantial weight would be given in favour of the proposal as it stands. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Vartley, and for your report. It was very comprehensive. We have a parish councillor representative, Councillor John Bowden. If you'd like to take the table, and it's a button on the right-hand side. It comes red when you switch it on. And I say you have 3 minutes.
On the right-hand side. Yes, we had only Connect up there, and now we've got 3 minutes. That sounds like, what's it, a mastermind, you know. The chair's almost black as well. Where's me notes? Oh, thank you. Good evening. I'm John Bowden, Chairman of Clifton-upon-Team Parish Council. Thank you for letting us speak at this meeting. It's fitting that the village has a say in this matter. There are letters from the Planning Officer and Terrace Strategic for the SWDP, but strangely, neither of them mentions this document, the Clifton-upon-Team Neighbourhood Plan. This is rather surprising, as it's the only approved document in place, the former SWP being out of date and the current one yet to be adopted. The neighbourhood plan was put together by volunteers from the village, so that the village, the most important party in this matter, had some say to the inevitable development within the village. This document was approved by Malvern Hills in 2017 and has been periodically revised as required. Both the planners and Terrace Strategic documents suggest there's a shortfall in the number of houses to be built within the village, but this is not the case. The NP details 4 sites, giving a total of 115 new houses, of which 91 have been built, with the added inclusion of 6 infill houses in Pound Lane and 1 extra on the road called the Village, which were not included within the original document. On the existing Hope Lane site, opposite the newly proposed site, 23 houses have been built, out of an allocation originally in the STWP of 30, which has over the years been increased to 33, not 35, as been incorrectly stated. It is likely that these extra 10 houses will be built on the existing Hope Lane site, should there be an economical reason for this. And a bit of late information, we spoke to Jeff Guest, and he was told he was not allowed to apply for planning permission for these 10 until the new South Worcestershire Development Plan had been approved. There's also a note that Terrace Strategic reckon that there's not enough room to build the road in between the existing houses. I measured it at 8 metres. It's also worth noting that this site of 55 houses has a far greater number of units than any of the sites within the neighbourhood plan. And as Terrace Strategic will acknowledge, the original proposal was for 65. The owner of the proposed site is the Winnington Estate, who also own the land on 2 of the sites that were included within the neighbourhood plan. The site at Church House Farm, which received full planning permission on the 5th of July 2015, has never been built, despite there being some 40 letters of support for this development from the village. Yeah, absolutely. So that's never happened. So it's you wonder whether this site, if it is passed, will ever be provided. And finally, both Terrace Strategic are saying that the works have actually started in Hope Lane. They haven't. There's 2 separate sites. It's a bit of a strange thing to find in a document. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry I ran over time.
We have an objector, Michelle Crawshaw.
Thank you. This is an outline application for residential development on a site that was rejected when reviewed in the Council's Strategic Housing Land Assessment. Instead, a site to the south of Hope Lane was allocated for 55 houses. The housing assessment explained that one of the reasons for ruling out this site was that Clifton has already experienced a lot of growth. If permission is granted for this additional development, Clifton upon Team would have double the number of houses proposed in the new South Worcestershire Development Plan. As the housing assessment pointed out, Clifton simply cannot accommodate this level of growth. The development would be on Grade 2 agricultural land, classed as the best and most versatile and highly important for the UK's food security. Worcestershire Council's Planning for Soils report shows Grade 2 land makes up only 16.6% of agricultural land in the county, meaning it is scarce and should be protected. The committee report says building on this best and most versatile land is justified if the scheme is acceptable in all other respects, but the proposals are not acceptable for numerous reasons, as the report acknowledges. The development would be in open countryside on a site already ruled out of the development plan. It would harm a valued landscape, which the National Planning Policy Framework says should be protected and enhanced. The committee report wrongly says that development would not be seen from significant views identified in policy CL1 of the Neighbourhood Development Plan. In fact, the site is clearly visible from significant viewpoint 1, which is Hope Lane from the south. The report says the landscape officer did not object, but the landscape officer did not say he had no objection. He said the development would have harmful impacts on the landscape and that large numbers of trees would be needed for screening if permission is granted. The development plan says category 1, 2 and 3 villages, of which Clifton upon Team is one, provide only small-scale local services and limited public transport, and that none currently have a railway station. The plan allocates only 376 dwellings to all of these settlements, instead focusing on areas with rail links. The proposed development is consequently in an unsustainable location according to the policies in the NPPF and the Emerging Development Plan. The development would discharge foul drainage to the Clifton upon Team sewage treatment works, which needs upgrading before it can accept new development. Any increase in flows into the treatment works threaten pollution of the River Team SSI1, which is already failing its conservation targets due to sewage pollution. The development would entail removal of hedges, threatening dormice and bats, both protected species, and requiring licences from Natural England, which may not be granted. Given another site has already been allocated to deliver homes for Clifton upon Team, there is no need to approve this application and allow all of the harms I have just described and many more outlined in dozens of objections to this application. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Right, and we have representing the applicant, or the applicant, I'm not sure, Richard Pitt. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of your officer's recommendation to approve outline consent for up to 55 dwellings. We have worked closely with the officers for nearly 10 months to reach the recommendation for approval before you today. To summarise the conclusions of what is a very thorough report by your officers, this is a proposal where there are no overriding technical concerns which could not be addressed via the imposition of planning conditions or through the determination of reserve matters. This includes matters relating to highways, education capacity, drainage, ecology and landscape. The development accords with virtually all policies in the development plan, and where there is conflict, that conflict is limited, with little to no actual planning harm. Weighed alongside this fact is the severe shortfall in housing supply, which is currently identified at just 2.06 years. To reference the planning inspector for the very recent appeal decision in Great Whitley, another Category 1 settlement where 90 dwellings were approved, the SWDP's development strategy is falling well short of its aim to meet the need for housing, and is also failing to support the government's objective of significantly boosting the supply of homes. As a consequence, the adopted policies are out of date and the presumption in favour of sustainable development must be applied. The proposed scheme would deliver BNG gains, children's play, other areas of public open space including SUDs, a community orchard and allotments, improved access into the heart of the village for new and existing residents, and will contribute towards improving various other local facilities. But most of all, it will deliver housing, including affordable housing for local people, with a number of housing associations having already expressed an interest in the proposed scheme. Even if there is a conflict with the development plan as a whole, these benefits clearly outweigh the limited degree of harm and permissions should still be granted. In conclusion, I politely request that the committee support your officer's recommendation to approve this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Right, councillors, time to debate. Paul or Pam? Paul. Councillor Paul Cummings.
We have in front of us tonight a very comprehensive and I believe balanced report. And members have also seen the site on themselves, those who are able to attend the site visit. But I would like to go through some of the key parts of this site. I note on the drawings that are on the website that not only have we got marked the areas where this application is for, but someone's very kindly put in where the next applications are going to go on the same map. The site is outside the development boundary, hence it is in open countryside. Pardon me, countryside. It is not in the SWDPR. It was presented for inclusion, but rejected. The village is already in excess of the number of houses that need to be provided in our own SWDPR document. So the argument that they're needed locally falls very quickly. And it goes against the neighbourhood plan. If we're going to overrule neighbourhood plans, why are we asking people to actually continue making them? Apart from comments on the site, there's a few other areas I think need looking at further. First of all, the issue of transport. It's quite clear that we have to look at the wider network for transport, as mentioned in the agenda 752, and there's no reference at all to that. In fact, that doesn't surprise me because the county haven't done a survey yet on the wider transport in this part of the world. Although I've been trying, I'm still trying to get them to do it. We don't know where people are going to work, so we don't know how we're going to get them there. The roads over the bridges to get the other side of the River Severn, for those who travel in, are already at capacity and have problems. The bus service, I think, is agreed by the county is not adequate in terms of timings and other things. And as I'm at the moment using the bus to get into work, I know full well how inadequate it is for people to actually carry out a proper job. The other other one is the education. It is stated that there will be 2 to 3 pupils, I presume that's per year, for this application. And there are 28 places for people from outside, this is a secondary school, from outside the current catchment area of the Chantry. That's fine, but if you then look at all the other applications that have been granted or are in process in the catchment area, they will produce on the same basis a lot more than places are available. And are we really going to encourage someone to go to everybody who goes at the moment, tell them to go away so we can accommodate the extra people? That ignores the fact that if the pattern in this area is the same as other areas, there'll be extra pupils from private schools who want places. So that makes the 28 places that are free even less available. I would like to, I recognise that the land supply issue is an important area, and we have to make a decision, a balanced decision, with all the various points in front of us. I would like, when we come to the decision-making stage, I would like to comment further on that as to how the balance should be considered. Thank you, Chairman.
We've heard this evening that Clifton upon Team has expanded significantly in recent years and been happy to do so. But another development of 55 houses could well tip a balance of a village into a dormitory settlement. There are no perceived or very few perceived sources of employment. And so, as we've heard, people have to try to get to work. And inevitably, I suspect, a good many of these will be going across into the West Midlands, going across Hambridge and going up towards one of the other bridges along the River Severn, which are already terribly congested and over capacity. And on another note that no one has mentioned this evening yet is the road from Clifton upon Team down to Hambridge, and more importantly as well in the other direction. It's actually a really steep climb. It's a narrow for a main road. It has sharp bends, and in the last few years there've been 2 lots of very, very, very serious accidents involving people in hospital in the QE for months on end, and actually others dying. It is not linked particularly to any other settlements. Martley is a few miles away, but you have to negotiate the hill going up to Clifton upon Team, going down to Hambridge. So what I would like to terminate my little talk by saying is 3 points. This is outside the development boundary, which was drawn up by the planners. It's a departure from the South Worcestershire Development Plan, and more importantly, it's not included in the new South Worcestershire Development Plan review. I await to hear the discussion. Thank you.
Speak at the moment. Councillor John Michael.
Thank you, Chair. It was alluded to by one of the speakers that there was an application site which was granted under the SWDP, which has not yet been built out. Can we know where that might be? Forward under the SWDP that has never been built on. No application has gone in for it. Did I mishear that?
Yes, can I point it out? As it's a matter
Yes.
of
Okay.
reading them out. Right. Have you got a pointer?
Please come forward and do it.
Where the tenant farmer of the Winnington estate, 3 generations are living in the house, which is due to be redeveloped under this 2015 plan. 2 of the sons who are married with babies are living in mobile homes.
I think we just need the location of these.
And
Right, thank you.
so now you know.
Do you wish to continue, John, or is that all you needed? Right. Councillor Goldwyn.
Verse 1, there's several, but first one, Lee, there's a panhandle on the top of this application, and if we go back to another plan in the roadmap, what's the significance of that? And that suspiciously looks like a connection for roadworks. Is that something that's on the cards?
Nothing that's on the cards. There was a query about whether we could open it up for pedestrian, but we're in the hands of the adjacent landowner.
Right.
No commitments to encourage some permeability, which is
So
where
money's got to change hands somewhere. Okay, righto, we've got that. Right. I'll come back to other ones. If I may, Mr. Chairman. The chair of the parish council very errantly put that the only subsisting and existing plan that is enforceable is the village plan, as everything else seems to have fallen away due to the lack of action by the inspectorate, and our applications remain outstanding. Is that correct?
It's out of date. It was made in 2017.
So the village plan is out of date as well, because we were told it was regularly updated.
Well, that's the information I have. It's out of date.
Okay.
More than 5 years old.
So there are no planning policies that we can rely upon, save for the PPF. Oh, well, we would bugger off and go home then. Thank you very much.
Councillor Watley.
Chair, I think given the statement, it would be useful to hear from the parish council representative if the parish plan is actually updated or whether it is back to 2017. As a matter of fact, Chair.
It had to be revised.
So it sounds very much like that isn't a formal plan in place. Right. Councillor Watley, did you want to? Councillor Tongwells.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Just a few questions, if I may. In fact, three. The case officer in his presentation referred, and I'm paraphrasing here, Lee, forgive me if I don't get it quite right. The government requires us to build lots of houses. Yes. Words to that effect. I just wondered how that's articulated in any documentation. Is that effectively how you read the MPPF? Is that, or is there something that I'm missing?
It is referred to in the MPPF.
Yeah.
I think 3 or 4 inquiries and hearings, one after the other, and it's always featured.
Chairman, if I may, it would be probably more, it might be better to refer to the policies contained within the MPPF rather than the government wants us to build lots of houses, therefore we're going to approve this. I think we need to wrap it around something slightly more technical than your reading of the government's requirements on local authorities. I think what you're talking about, Lee, is something that is enshrined with the revised MPPF as put forward at the back end of last year. I think that's what we're talking about rather than anything else other than that. The second point is, I'm a bit confused about this because the housing needs survey was undertaken in October, November 2019. Now, I'm told that they're only really valid for a period of up to 5 years. Well, my maths tells me we're way beyond that point. So just wondering how it may well be in the gestation of this application, it might have been submitted. There was reference to conversations between officers and applicants at some point in the past. But right now, here we are sitting tonight to determine this application. Is it not the case that the housing needs survey is now, by our own definition, out of date? It does say in your report, if it helps, Chair, that the survey is considered valid for the 5-year period up to November 24, and therefore is very nearly at its end point. Well, I contest it's gone beyond its end point if we are saying 5 years is the period at which we should be looking at housing needs survey. I was wondering if we might get a response to that.
Sorry, I mean, I'm not going to answer it direct, I don't think, but we're in the territory that we go on about local housing need and the villages that are very isolated, I might add. But we are coming back to the fact that we don't have a 5-year land supply, and the district housing supply is the local housing need in one sense. So we are failing to meet those requirements.
I think we're dealing with apples and pears possibly here. I was referring to the specific housing needs survey that was identified and carried out in October, November 2019. And we're predicating much of this application on that, its findings. And Lee is, in his own report, says that actually it's now nearly at its end point, I think was the phrase used. And of course, it is beyond that end point if we're going to be strictly working towards the 5-year supply. Sorry, the 5-year period for the housing needs survey to be valid. My third point is one of pragmatism. If the council were minded to refuse this application this evening, and assuming that the applicant appealed, my question would be, in those circumstances at the time of the appeal, whether it's written or in person, would the status of the MPPF and the emerging South Worcestershire review be judged at that point in its gestation, or the point upon which we are discussing tonight? I'm particularly mindful, Chairman, of we understand we've got something significantly less than a 5-year supply right now, but we also know that's measured from April to April, and so it's almost redundant, and a new housing needs survey may be relevant, but also perhaps more importantly, we look to consider the circumstances that would prevail at the time of an appeal, So it's a factual question. Would the material considerations be those prevalent at the time or those prevalent tonight?
I think that's one for Simon Moore, isn't it? As policy. Or are you willing to take it, Eileen?
I mean, I would observe that we will be considering the issues at the appeal at that moment in time. So if circumstances change, and some people hope they will, I might not be one of those. But if circumstances change, then clearly we will be considering the issues at that point in time. So the 5-year housing land supply, which you're getting at, will become relevant. But that's not a good way to sort of plan. Sorry. Can you? Yes, just to recap, can you hear me? When we get to an appeal, which is presumably 3 months plus into the future, the inspector will be considering the issues as they stand at that time. So we won't be considering the issues as of today. But that is to assume that we are in a different position than we are, and not a worse position than we are at this point in time. And we do not know.
Councillor Wells.
Chairman, it's in part to do with the 5-year supply, but probably more importantly, Chairman, it's to do with the gestation of the new, our own South Worcestershire joint plan. And we've been through another part of that journey only recently. And my understanding is, and perhaps Simon will clarify, that as we go through that process, it's like, a bit like a snowball going down a hill, it gathers more momentum and more weight. And by the time an appeal might be held, more likely in 6 months than 3 months, that would be unusual for the planning inspectorate to turn that around so quickly, we will be into the autumn. And I would imagine that the portfolio holder would be very interested to see by that stage whether we could actually formally adopt it. So it's wishful thinking on my behalf to a degree, but on the other hand, it's a material consideration at that time, not now, but at that time it would be.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Well, a lot of people have had a little tiny dab at this. I did a lot of work last night and this morning on this and was very interested to find that the application submitted, obviously, as was said quite a while ago, and the County Council very kindly responded pretty quickly and what have you, and had a vast number of questions that were outstanding. It appears that the applicant has responded to that. Not quite certain exactly when it was. I don't know whether it was February. He's nodding. In February and what have you. And the application or the response back from the County Council was published on the website today, this morning. So I hope you've all read it and what have you. You're shaking your head down there. Nobody seems to have sort of read it. Well, it makes interesting reading. First of all, let's create a little question, well, not a question, a little statement for Councillor Godwin, who's behind me, where it quite categorically states in the County Council's a response that a pedestrian connection will be provided to the northeast of the site, linking the site to Salford Close and joining the pedestrian infrastructure provided by a previous developer in this location. This would offer a more direct route for pedestrians to access amenities located to the north of the village, including the village store. I don't know where the village store is, but it's quite a distance away. I have had a little look and what have you. I think, if I'm right, you go down Hope Lane to the end and then turn left, and I think it's up there on the right.
Correct.
So I'm not doing too bad so far. This will provide, obviously, more access if you can get to the store. And it says it will be provided within the internal site as a reserved matter stage. Yeah, definitely. That's providing the applicant who owns that piece of land will sell it. If not, you've got to walk down what I call Hope Lane. Now, I did, again, quite a bit of work on this. I'll start at the B4204, right at the bottom right. If you just point it out, can you, Lee, please, roughly where it is, so everybody knows? No, it's on there. It's on the map, yeah. Isn't it? Oh, no, it's further off, isn't it? Further off, yeah. First of all, on the first patch, right as far as Saxon Close, there is a footpath on the south side. Now, this is 2 foot wide. The minimum required, according to the highways, is 3 foot. So that will have to be widened. Now, looking at it, part of it can be widened into the grass verge, but I don't know who owns that. It may be the parish, it may be the county, what have you. After that, when you get to Saxon Close, you've got quite a stretch, about 20 metres, where there's no footpath on either the north or the south side. So then we carry on and we're going up to Ken Elm Road, I think it's called. Please correct me, somebody, if I'm wrong. No, they're nodding, that's good. Where we have a footpath, which is 2 foot wide, it's 4 metres in length, and then it reverts to a 21-inch wide for the remainder up to the field entrance. There's no tactile crossings except near the proposed development, and there's no crossings available from north to south or vice versa. Now, it's quite obvious through reading the County Council report that they are quite willing, or somebody is quite willing, to allow them to widen the footpath. Now, I drove down Hope Lane twice because I got lost first time. Apologies for that. But anyway, I got down there and found the site eventually and what have you. And this is hard to pass now with 2 cars. If you're going to take a series of, in some of the instance, from this Kendelm Road further on the western side, right down to the site, this is going to mean that the road is probably going to be narrowed by at least 1 metre, which will mean that you won't get 2 cars passing very easily. You probably will just, you certainly won't get cars and heavy goods vehicles passing. That's just one of the sort of things that I found in here. I think this is a nightmare. Very unusual word for me to use. I think with everything that's there, I think this, to be honest, should be refused. But I do want to bring up another question just before we get there. Everybody keeps going on about the 5-year land supply. Nobody has yet been able to tell me what it actually means. Because at the inspectors' meetings, we were talking about 5-year housing land supply, and we didn't meet it in the Malvern Hills district. And that's fairly understandable because we don't meet it really across the whole district. But here's the crunch. How many houses have been approved planning permission and not been built at all? Now, we've had another 15 today. I think you said 15. Sorry? 17. Okay. I was 2 out. But mind you, being 2 out, as silly as it seems, you know, that's nearly 20%, isn't it? There are mega estates that have been approved. I know of at least 2, one for 2,204 and one for 820 odd at Newlands. And these have been approved many, many years ago, and there's not a brick being laid yet. So until somebody can actually sort out what the 5-year housing land supply is, how it's calculated, as we're granting all of these, and we're granting them weekly, there are planning applications going to council by developers, even by individuals, and each one of these increases our land supply. I know only one or two in you know, a small house in a state or something like that isn't going to do much good. But there's many large ones, and I think most of the councillors that are here would be able to say, well, we've got one in our patch and what have you. So why is this land supply not coming down? Well, it won't come down, it never will, because the developers will never build anything. The latest development that I read, which came through on appeal, gave the developers 2 years in which to submit the the reserve matters application. That is a minimum we should do if we approve this. There's one down in Bristol, they gave them 12 months to submit all the reserve matters applications. That would be much better. But even so, they don't want to do it. Most of the developers, to my mind, don't want to do it. They just want to land bank it, and that can be seen by the one you've already got in your village here. So I don't want to take over Councillor Cummins' item, but I believe this should be refused. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Could I ask that we don't involve the members of the public in their discussions, please, unless it's absolutely necessary? Councillor Godwin, you did indicate a view.
Yes, going back to what Councillor Wells was saying, that the assessment would be based on a assessment at that time and would not be retrospective on tonight's decision. Is that correct? Just to make sure.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah. Is that normal practice? Because it's acting as retrospective assessment.
Let's be clear on this point. If circumstances change between now, this evening, and any appeal, in the event there's a refusal and the appeal date, the inspector has to be mindful of the circumstances that exist in terms of policy at that point in time.
Right.
So, you know, there are a number of potential things on the horizon which could alter the decision. The issues we've considered this evening, in terms of the materiality of those, wouldn't necessarily change. We're talking about policy and 5-year supply and changes that might be made to the framework in the intervening period, which we, you know, can't anticipate necessarily what those will be.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Councillor John Michael, you've spoken once, so very quickly, please.
Yeah, well, I just want to come back to this, to talk about sustainability. I mean, we seem to be sticking these little applications on to every little village in the country. Using Lee's words, this is an isolated community. It, to my mind, is rather unsustainable. The public transport's patchy, the employment is minimal, so people will be travelling, presumably Stourport, Tenbury, I don't know exactly, on very narrow roads, clogging up bridges which are now over capacity, Stourport, etc. And I just wonder sometimes whether the sustainability aspect is really considered fully in some of these applications. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cummings, did you wish to make a proposal?
Yes, please, Chairman. We've heard a lot of reasons why this should not be built from local people who very effectively put the arguments, and members as well. The only item in favour of this is the 5-year land supply issue, and that depends on the situation with the SWDPR. Now, had I gone back and checked all the timings, if we were to turn this down after we've applied our tilted balance to it, the earliest, based on the current situation of when they're coming through, will be an appeal in August, which I doubt would happen because it's holiday period. So we're talking September probably. The inspector's timetable says that in July they should present the main modifications if it's regarded to be found sound on that basis. Therefore, we're going to have a pretty good indication in July as to whether they're going to be accepted or not. And I think that gives it considerable weight. So, again, applying the tilted balance, which we always reminded of, I believe that is firmly in favour of not building this. So I will propose that. The reasons going through the agenda suggest SWDP 2, 12, 16, 18 and 25. But there's another one in there, is the NPPF, according to the County Council's publication today. Paragraph 110 says that development should be focused on locations, blah, 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 through limiting the need to travel and offering a genuine choice of transport modes. That really fails completely on that one. And I'm not surprised, because the reason this was turned down, the reason this was accepted by the county, as they've stated in their document, was that planning permission was granted in 2014 for another development. What on earth 2014's got to do with anything? I have no idea. I think they're really scraping the barrel to come up with the answer that somebody wants. So I'm happy to propose we go against officer's recommendation and refuse this application.
For clarity, is that the only reason you're giving for refusal?
No, I think it contravenes SWDP 2, 12, 16, 18 and 25.
I think you're going to need to clarify it more than just by giving numbers, I'm afraid. Do you want to consult with their officer whilst we have a short break?
That might be helpful in order to make sure we get it accurate the way we need it.
Is that okay?
Can we first, though, articulate the topic issues?
Right, so if you can just tell me the major heading within those.
Obviously, it's in the isolated countryside dwelling. It's against the plan. It contravenes it in a number of areas. It fails to recognise the role and nature of this particular field, which is outside the village. And what's happening with the other potential applications as per the plan we're being given, the village is getting surrounded by further development. It will be virtually, not quite, but pretty well all round three sides at least of the village. And it's not suitable for development because we've already got enough houses in Cliff. We've got more than enough, according to our own figures. So I think those are the key areas which I think need to be considered. It is relevant, as I mentioned before, that the Shalar rejected this site. So the reason why it shouldn't be granted, we will already know, or the officers will know, because they've looked at it once and they found the reasons why it shouldn't be built on. So I think that covers the areas, the location, contravenes the plan, the transport, and it contravenes the neighbourhood plan as well, which has been revised. But I'm not quite sure what number that comes under. So, yes, I've been reminded that it's outside the development boundary to focus on some of the points I've made.
Again, is that enough to give you
Chairman, I would add, if we could, the education on this one.
I think you'll
but
find...
I think as the county have, in my view, incorrectly not objected, I'm not sure we can do that.
There was a county court, a high court judgment on that recently that said that you couldn't use that because the education authorities had to in the end. So, Councillor Peter Watley.
Chair, in the spirit of helpfulness, my colleague, could I suggest that the a summary of the rationale might be that this application is outside the settlement boundary, has an unsustainable location in terms of transport provision, and also that the development as suggested on top of other developments would have a materially harmful effect to the totality of the community.
Does Councillor Cumming agree with that?
Would you agree with that summary, Councillor Cumming? Seemed quite adequate.
Could I ask Councillor Watley if he would repeat it, please, so make sure I've got everything?
I'll do my best to remember exactly what I said, but I think the summary was that the proposed development was outside the settlement boundary, constituted development that was unsustainable in transport terms and therefore environmentally harmful, and also in its totality taken with other developments produced an adverse effect on the aspect and social well-being of the community as a whole. I think I did social well-being there, but I seem to remember that's in our policies.
Think we ought to add is also harmful to the area because of its very important site, as discussed by the the parish council as well, and the fact that surrounding the village, I don't think is a very good idea to maintain proper communities.
Not sure that's material. It is, though, in open countryside, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's contrary to that policy of theirs. Although I'm aware, of course, that under the present situation, then inspector might not find that relevant.
Thank you. Okay, so we've clarified, I think, the issues of refusal. It would be neglectful of me, I think, in the current climate to not caution members against refusing the application on these grounds. Firstly, there are, and I think legal, correct me if I'm wrong, there are no technical objections to this application. Is that right?
Yes. Correct.
Yeah. So there's none of the consultees, none of the experts, let's call them, in terms of things like landscape, the statutory consultees, education, highways, have objected to the proposal, raised concerns that couldn't be addressed by conditions or through mitigation in terms of 1 or 6 clauses. So that's going to create an issue if members refuse the application and then expect an expert witness to defend the council's position in terms of that appeal decision. I'm anticipating that none of the members who've spoken eloquently this evening about their concerns have seen or received any other input or comments from other experts who they could say, here's a report from somebody that counters the expert opinion that's been given by the statutory consultees. So the members are using their own judgment in voicing those concerns.
What we were elected
for. Yeah, but I just wanted to be clear that there wasn't any counter evidence from other technical experts that people have consulted. I don't think that's the case. You'd have drawn that to our attention. Is that?
Councillor
Through you,
Watley?
if I may, Chair, just to come back on that, I think we've heard eloquently from Councillor Harrison about the dimensions and parameters of the public footpaths, and I haven't heard anything that says that you're going to condition them to a point where the highway would not be impinged. So I think we have a reasonable case there to dispute highways parameters. I'm not saying that it's irrefutable one way or the other, but there is a case to be made there. And it is indisputable that this is outside the settlement boundary, is it not?
Well, let's just deal with. There's 2 points there. Let's do the first point concerning the concerns about the highway parameters. Now, I think officers' advice would be to defer the application for clarification on those points, so the Highway Authority could respond, because there isn't a representative of the Highway Authority here this evening. Yeah, that's regrettable. That's where we are, but I think that would be prudent if there was concern on that point. The point about the settlement boundary, that isn't in itself a reason to refuse permission. It's a fact, and there are a number of sites, quite a number of sites that are outside the settlement boundary, but the assessment of whether, on balance, they're sustainable isn't limited to where a line is drawn on the plan. That's not the basis of the MPPF assessment, whether it's inside or outside a settlement boundary. We have to look at a balance of issues. That becomes merely an observation or a statement of fact in a refusal reason. It's not a reason in itself.
Councillor Harrison, you should.
I would, thank you very much. I wasn't happy with this from the start, which I said, partly because the information from the highways was provided and what have you, and their recommendation was absolutely clear at the beginning or at the end, I'm not quite sure, no, at the beginning, to recommend the application be deferred, seeking further information and clarification. That we received this today. That we received today. Now, I've read it. How many councillors have read it? How many even knew it was issued? And yet we did get an update sometime during the week. I'm sorry, I'm going to argue with our officers here. For our officers to state that none of us have managed to get any documentation or anything until about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we didn't even know this was coming to committee. Probably Councillor Cummins may have known, but we didn't know. We knew it would probably come to committee, but we didn't know when. And all of a sudden, I was still waiting for information to come from the highways. And then this morning or last night, I did an email to find out whether we'd got any, which we had. So I take exception that we haven't done our due diligence when we didn't even know about it. What have you? Sorry.
Councillor Wells, we seem to be re-debating, which
I think, Chairman, we're listening very carefully to our planning officers at this point in the evening. I would refute, Chairman. I do not believe it's my job as a mere councillor to find or identify expert witnesses to justify a position we may or may not wish to take this evening. I've never heard of that before. Let me just come back. So the MPPF says that applications should be approved unless there's significant demonstrable harm, but based on sustainable locations. There's an awful lot of wriggle room in those three words: sustainable, demonstrable, significant. These are things that are open to interpretation. So I do believe that the MPPF does not say anything anywhere. It's a measure by which we are obliged to consider this application this evening. I'm interested in Councillor Harrison's forensic dissertation on the latest position of the highways, and that in itself would justify a reason for deferral this evening to get some clarification. It wouldn't be the first time the highways have misled us or haven't provided us with the professionalism we would expect from them. And the point I made earlier, which I don't really want to labour again, but the housing needs survey is now 5.5 years out of date. And if we're going to justify entries into the open countryside on data that's 5.5 years out of date, I think we're in a very slippery position where that may take us in future. So I do think also that a more up-to-date housing needs survey would be required to, on the basis of this application and other applications of this type. The officer's own report says that 5 years is the period of time we should be looking at for such things.
Right. Councillor Cummins, back to you.
At this stage, I've put the recommendation that we refuse it. If it would help members, I'd be happy to change that to we defer a decision until a future meeting to discuss the points that Councillor Wells has made and Councillor Harrison's made as well, because we don't have the information because it's a very late report. I know we have another application where we've got a similar situation because we just not got the information or response that we need. So I'd be happy if it helps members to support, basically. I'd be happy to have it deferred.
Thank you. So you're moving deferral?
I'll move deferral.
Right. Have we a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Pan Cummings. In that case, I think we'll go to the vote. Would you like to sum up in any way?
Well, we might just want to clarify why we're deferring. If we can summarise the reasons. I know there are some highway issues from what I've heard from Councillor Harrison in terms of dimensions, checking dimensions. But if we can capture that, there's two. So we've got two issues. We've got the housing needs survey is out of date. So we want a response on that and the clarification of where that leaves us in terms of the reliability of that data. Is that correct? Yes. And then we've got the highway issues. Can we just clarify what we want? Is this a matter for the Highway Authority to address on their own, or is it also a matter for the applicant to address in terms of the information required?
Councillor Harrison seems to have dealt with this in more depth. So.
Sorry. There are quite a few things. I've only pulled one. The County Council said that the entrance, and bearing in mind that we are only deciding tonight the entrance, the access from Hope Lane, as to really whether this goes ahead. The applicant has very kindly, at the request of the Highways, provided a plan that shows that a tractor can get into the site. Because don't forget, as I said, the only thing we've got to decide is the access. And I assume the access covers the lane as well. So I'm not happy with the information that's provided to do with the lane. I'm certainly not happy by the applicant's response for the I don't know what you call them, the survey that they provide for getting round corners and what have you to do with tractors, because it's providing for a tractor.
Well, there's a retained agricultural access.
It has, yes, but it's a tractor that is being granted permission. A tractor will not go onto this site unless it's towing something and what have you. And it's totally different to providing an access for a car and a car and trailer. In this case, it's totally different to having a tractor and a tractor's implements. And so I don't think there's enough information there. I don't know because I don't know what is required. But, you know, there's just two or three things. Well, I'm just not happy with either.
Councillor Watley. You were just
Wasn't intended to
gesticulating.
speak, but perhaps Councillor Harrison would accept the amplification that we require details of the entire access from the existing village core to this site, including carriageway widths and footway widths, and any crossings suggested from side to side of the footways. Yeah, I hope that's acceptable, David.
And proposals. Yes.
Is that acceptable to you, Councillor Cummings?
Yes, I think that covers most of the areas.
Right, thank you. Councillor Pan Cummings the same? Yes. Thank you. Right. Do you want to say anything more before we go to the votes?
Mr. Chairman, will that include the access that they state is to be provided from that little tiny bit at the north end? The little hand at the north end? Well, it is. It says that all we are providing is, and I'm sure I must.
Footpath that's going to be connecting to the village.
Yes.
Well, Lee already said that's not in our gift at the moment.
Well, it quite clearly states that we're providing outline planning permission with means of access to the site. And that is access to the site. If they can't do it, just say you can't do it.
So we want more detail on that that point of access.
Sorry, it says in here that there is, or no, it was in Lee's report, I think, that something had been provided regarding that little bit of an access.
Venus, we haven't heard from you tonight today.
Reason for deferment. Thank you.
Right. You're content. Well, we got reason right. Thank you. So we'll go to the vote. So the vote is for deferral, and I'll leave it in your hands.
All those in favour of deferral, please raise your cards. That's unanimous, Chair. The motion
Thank you.
carried.
Right, that concludes the meeting. Thank you.